I want you to imagine you're at the library looking for a spot to study, where there's a lot of empty seats. So now, which seat would you like to? Which would you more likely choose? Option 1, a seat directly across to or next to a complete stranger. Option 2, next to several empty chairs away from the stranger. I think most of us here are more likely choose option 2 because we feel awkward and uncomfortable when we get too close to somebody we don't know. So does the distance between you and the others matters? A study to explain this kind of situation is called personal space, and that's what I want to explain to you today. I'm taking the personal class right now, and this was one of the things that my class went over, and it really helped my eyes because it's, when you think about it, it's something that actually happens to everyday life. So I want to discuss what is personal space and estimated distance that study determine. So what is personal space? To simplify, you can say it's an invisible bubble that surrounds you. So if people invade your bubble, you feel uncomfortable. I drew this little, really ugly picture, but this is your bubble. And if somebody gets too close to you, invades your bubble, you feel uncomfortable. So that's basically what it is. And actually, there's 4 zones that determine your bubbles, and it's called proxemics, a term introduced by Edward T. Hall in 1966. Here's a better picture. And then your first bubble is called intimate space, and it's distance between 0 to 1.5 feet, and it's for embracing, touching, and whispering. So you allow only a few people that you are really close to get into that zone. And the next zone is called a personal space, and it's distance between 1.5 feet to 4 feet, and it's for interactions among good friends. And in the next one is for the personal zone, social space, because it's third one. It's distance between 4 to 12 feet, and it's interactions among known people. And the next one is called public space, and its distance begins 12 feet from the person. Unfortunately, it's used for public speaking. But the distance that I just told you is not actually, it can be very different, because everyone's personal space is different, and it depends on you and who you are talking to and what are the circumstances. One of the things that impacts your personal zone is culture. In Latin culture, the distance between people is more like the smaller. People feel comfortable to stand close to each other. But in Nordic culture, people feel opposite. They feel more likely comfortable when they get a little bit more farther. Personal distance is depending on the culture, social status, gender, and individual preference. Today I talked about personal distance, what it is, and discussed estimated distance. So when you're talking to strangers, try to avoid get too close to them, because otherwise they will feel that you are in their face and will try to back away.
Mike, what did you think?
I thought it was a very interesting subject. I don't think that many people would touched it. I like how she made the little bubble, people kind of girl, and like that little stuff in the middle. To show, like, you know, the space, and I was kind of thinking of bubble gum, so kind of bubble gum. And then I thought I like the other one too, because it, you know, I mean, it's, you know, gives you a good range. It showed like that she was explaining the distances of feet. It was giving me a good perception of from self to, you know, intimate, personal, social, and public, and it kind of gave me a view of, you know, how that is between me and other people. So it was pretty good. I thought maybe she could have been a little bit, she could have maybe used another visual aid to, and that's about it.
Okay. I think your visualization right at the beginning of the speech needs to be a little simpler. Practicing it out, I think, would help a bit, because I was getting lost in the image that you're trying to create then, and then when you got toward the end of it, it made a little bit more sense. The topic's very clearly identified. I think your goal needs to be sharper, that you're going to basically be outlining for us what the notion of the proxemic relationships are, because that's mostly what you focus on. You define some of those different categories in Hall's classification, but in a very perfunctory way. I think you need some illustrations to make them interesting and useful to people. They're barely understandable the way you've described them, and the detail is a little thin on those points. It's organized primarily by those categories, so that's not a big deal. It's, you know, it's pretty well structured basically by the classification there. The visuals, I thought the first one was a cute attempt to kind of define that notion of what, you know, the different distances mean, and, you know, that we become space invaders. You know, that works okay. They need to be a little bit more polished in the way they're put together. They look a little last minute, or maybe a little underdone for the kind of audience that you're talking to. I think you could do more on that. And you're not using the transparency machine. You went to all the trouble to get the podium over there for you to stand behind, and that was wrestling. The other thing's on wheels. You could have shoved it out of the way in 10 seconds, and it wouldn't have been between you and most of the people in your audience for the speech. So I think that would have been something that you want to be aware of also. Speaking of the use of space, you know, let me put a barrier between me. I've got a transparency machine and a podium to hide behind. All right, thank you very much. Let's see. As far as I can tell, we've only lost for sure 2 people from the folks that we assigned for these speeches. Luis has vanished on us, and Sarah dropped the class, so I'm assuming Luis has stopped also. So, you know, our mortality rate is not too bad at this point. All right, you guys are doing a good job. I hope I'll have all these things for you on Tuesday. I expect to. If you did a peer evaluation today, please leave it with me before you go. Thank you. Say again? No, it's okay. We only have one Annie.
Evaluation, if people didn't comment, like mine was for Sarah.
Yeah, that's not going to count against you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, shoot, this is still going.